Hey there, my name is Vosh. I live stream on YouTube and Twitch, and sometimes I even upload the good bits. This is Previously Live. Hooli, what's up?
Hello?
Hello.
Testing. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. What's up?
Oh, shit, I'm kind of nervous now. I'm actually a big fan. I've been watching you for like the last 4 months, almost all of your videos.
Nice.
But,
Well, you know
I
what?
just-
For as long as I've known you, I've been a big fan of you too. So, what's up? What's the contention?
Yeah, I just had a few takes that I thought were kind of off,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. I'm trying to think of these off the top of my head. I think, for starters, I didn't. Okay, so you were kind of defending ISIS, sort of. I don't want to say you're defending ISIS. I'm sure you would put it differently, but you like, if I remember correctly, you were kind of comparing, what's his name, Sargon's, his discourse,
Political positions with those of ISIS?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really like when you do that, you say, "Oh, Sargon is conservative,
Mm-hmm.
and ISIS is conservative." That seems really reductive. You're like, well, like it. So you're saying almost like a slippery slope argument, where it's like, oh, if Sargon continued to do whatever, like let's say he could have the world as he wished, he would have it like ISIS, you know.
I don't think that the world would be, like, as though it were controlled by ISIS if Sargon had his desired world. The issue I have is that usually the people who are most fanatical about condemning militant Islamicism are the people whose political positions are basically an anglicized version of those. So it's not just that they're both conservative, it's that Sargon is an autocratic fascist who who A, believes in a conspiracy brought about by egghead intellectual progressives to destroy the West, B, he believes that degeneracy and cultural assimilation are bringing down our once great empire, and C, he believes in establishing like an ethno-state to return us to our former glory. He doesn't have the same like religious element as ISIS, but when it comes to like the baseline political positions, the only real difference is that he uses a microphone and they use guns. It's just a little hypocritical to me. Like, I'm the one who should be able to criticize ISIS. ISIS is a conservative institution. I stand against that.
Okay, you just said the only difference is that he talks and ISIS uses guns. So it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You're implying that if he had the guns and the firepower, we'd be living in some kind of, horrific ISIS-like state.
Well, I think we'd be living in an autocratic fascist ethno-state, similar to what we had back during the days of, like, Nazi Germany, yeah. I mean, people like Sargon have had guns before. We see what happens. Like, that's what it turns into. Now, of course, the particular historical circumstances are different. Obviously, Islam is not the same as Christianity. There are differences in its aesthetics and the tendencies of its followers, though I don't think those differences are very significant, personally. And Sargon is, at least to my knowledge, not a particularly religious person, so there's not as much of, like, a moral imperative there. But fundamentally, yeah, I think that the arm of his history swings in the same direction.
Okay, but to me, it seems like that's the slippery slope argument to the 10th power, you know?
I'm not saying it's a slippery slope. I'm saying that it's the same. Their arguments, their position, the alt-right and ISIS fundamentally use the same political tactics and the same political reasoning to achieve virtually identical ends. They're just opposed to one another.
Okay, well, this actually kind of ties into my other criticism that I have of the left and, certain things that it seems you kind of condone. The idea, to put it, the punch-a-Nazi idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a clear delineation between speech and violence. And what I really dislike about the left is when they go after speech because they claim that it leads to violence.
Well, I'm very pro free speech, but being pro free speech does sometimes mean that you have to prevent people from engaging in certain forms of speech. Like, are you pro life? Like, do you believe generally people have a right to life? I don't mean like abortion. Like, do people have a right to life?
Yeah, sure.
What do you do if you're in the middle of like Midland Park and like a gunman like starts open firing on people, like just starts gunning them down, 10, 20, 30 people, and you send the police in? Like, should the police shoot, or should they like try to capture the guy without killing him?
They should kill him, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree. And much in the same way that you understand that in that instance, it is necessary to kill to protect the sanctity of life, I too recognize that in order to protect the sanctity of freedom and of free speech, there are some types of speech that need to be curtailed.
All right, so it sounds like you're saying you're pro free speech, except for people you disagree with.
No, there are tons of people I disagree with who I think should have a right to free speech. There are some types of free speech that stifle other forms of free speech. Like, for example, imagine it's the 1960s and you're a civil rights advocate, you know, like MLK type, you know, and you are constantly being beleaguered, harassed, sometimes even threatened by Ku Klux Klanners, white citizen councilmen, police chiefs, the FBI, stuff like that. Now, some of those acts on their part are acts of free speech. They have a legal right to those things. But in a practical sense, all that ends up doing is stifling your right to free speech, because you can't fundamentally enact it if there are powerful entities out there that are trying to stifle you. Does that make sense?
The problem is it really up to you to decide, though? Like, who are you? Like, you're not the arbiter of what's acceptable speech and what isn't. In my personal opinion, I think a person should be allowed to go out and say, hey, slavery should be reinstated. And, you know, people can listen to him and disregard him and call him out as an idiot. But, you know, punching him is stupid. I just don't agree with that at all.
Well, who decides whether or not it's okay to execute somebody to preserve others' lives?
Well, I mean, that would just be, what is it, like the pragmatic or just a pure numbers game, like you would see.
But who decides that? Like, who decides when it's okay to kill a person to protect the lives of others?
The police.
What? Okay, so clearly somebody can decide it. So we have somebody who gets to decide, or some institution that gets to decide, what types of free speech are unacceptable and harmful. Like, we have an institution that can decide when it's okay to take a life. I'm sure we can have an institution that can decide when it's okay to prevent certain types of speech.
I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that any kind of speech should be stifled. And I think saying that, oh, it should be stifled because it radicalizes people, and then these people that are radicalized are gonna do crazy things. That's like, you know, slippery slope. You're going
let me ask you
step.
a philosophical argument, okay? What if there was a prominent online movement, we don't have to name any names here, but what if there was a prominent online movement that was disseminating certain types of rhetoric? That rhetoric has started to show up in the manifestos of terrorists that have been acting all over the world. People are starting to take action on account of the very legal invocation of free speech that you see from this online movement. And you know somehow, let's say prophetically, that if things continue as they are without any type of ulterior intervention, there will be a fascist takeover of the country that you live in, and all free speech will be silenced. Would you
is that people who
stop
read them? Yeah, no, I would not stop them from writing whatever the hell they want.
Even if you knew that them doing so would eventually lead to the destruction of all free speech?
Well, in that hypothetical, you're already assuming that's what's going to happen. But in my opinion, someone can write a manifesto, you know, like taking it in real world terms. Someone can write whatever the hell they want. People aren't going to suddenly start committing violent acts.
They do, though. Do you think wait, out of curiosity, do you think incitement to violence should be illegal?
For person only if it's directly like a straightforward cause and effect. Like, okay, you're telling somebody kill them, but not when you do like, all these steps removed. Oh, they're saying bad things. These bad things get people thinking the wrong way, and then maybe one of those people is going to go crazy and shoot up a school.
So
or whatever,
So that's completely circumnavigatable, then. What you're essentially saying is the only time it's illegal to incite violence is when the person doing so is stupid enough to implicate themselves by directly calling for a specific person to incite violence. However, if you have a YouTube channel and you start saying stuff like, it's time for us to rise, it's time for us, it's time for the day of the rope, for the white race to reclaim its homeland, and for the race traders and the brown and the what have you folk to hang from lampposts, but you don't specify any particular date, time, person, that you think should be legal?
Just generally, like if I wanted to say, oh, lynch all black people, yeah, that should be legal to say.
Okay, I mean, I strongly disagree. The reason why there are laws against incitement to violence right now is because we've kind of recognized that, like, usually the incitation of violence isn't as simple as just like one person. It's not like Charles Manson. Like, you don't just tell one person to go commit a crime. It's usually about disseminating rhetoric that leads to stochastic terrorism or to the implementation of certain political policies that end up hurting people. I care a lot about freedom of speech, so I care about stopping things that are going to hurt freedom of speech. I care about life, so I want to stop things that will hurt life. That doesn't just begin and end when a person picks up a gun. There are other things that happen beforehand, perhaps times at which stopping it would be more effective than had they picked up a gun, where I think we can intervene and make, a positive change.
Well, like I said before, the issue is that you're suddenly looking 5 steps ahead and deciding, oh, well, this is going to lead to that, is going to lead to that, is going to lead to that. Like, to me, it's just, there's no one who could really just know for a fact or decide, that's, oh, this is going to lead to violence or whatever when it's five steps removed.
No, political theorists have known for a long time what leads to what. Nobody should have been surprised by the Charlottesville incident. Nobody should have been surprised by what happened at Christchurch. These are all very natural reactions to Lauren Southern, for example, with the Great Replacement like rhetoric that she used. That was came up specifically in the manifesto of the Christchurch shooter. That one's pretty specific, easily to trace. We know what leads people to making certain political decisions. Hold on, let me close my window. Car alarm went off. Here. Sorry. Yeah. So. Yeah, for me, I just think it's a little bit naive to act as though I want to bring about a society that has the best of all possible worlds. I want a good society, one that functions well. I don't think a society functions well if it doesn't have a natural defense mechanism against things like fascism. Fascism is a plague that eats away at societies. It makes them worse. I don't really think it's that unreasonable to say, hey, if you've built a political apparatus oriented entirely around the dissemination of hate and misinformation, it's probably reasonable that something be done about that. It should be noted, by the way, I'm not advocating for the government to take any steps against this. I support the freedom of speech, the First Amendment, as it exists now. I'm mostly talking about censorship, like with YouTube or Twitter or what have you.
Well, okay, if you could have control of YouTube, would you just close Sargon's channel or Steven Crowder? Would you just shut them down?
I would obliterate them. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. Unquestionably. These people commit TOS violations every fucking video they do. Even Steven Crowder, who plays way closer to the vest than Sargon, can't go a single video without doing some sort of 2-minute fucking, Amos and Andy skit on Chinese people with their buck teeth and slant eyes, or black people with their big lips and silly voices. He consistently violates the TOS. I think they have every justification in the world to go ahead and
putting the TOS aside, just talking about free speech, I think that's I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that you would shut down even a person that goes on YouTube and starts talking about how much he hates N-words or whatever.
But it doesn't bring about a better world.
Speech isn't violence, and that's what I hate about the left, is that they keep equating speech to violence.
Speech is absolutely violence.
Maybe you could...
Well, some forms of speech. Obviously not all forms of speech. This is what we're doing right now.
Someone screaming fire in a movie theater, or someone saying, hey, please kill X person. Yeah, I would agree. That's violence, but... just talking in general...
Wait, why that totally arbitrary distinction? What's the difference between saying, you all need to kill this group, and somebody saying, we, the white race, need to kill this group? What's the difference between those two things?
Yeah, it's simple. Because people are allowed to decide their opinion upon hearing whatever stupid thing they see on. Just like, you know, someone could go to your channel and be won over by your leftist rhetoric or whatever. And like, yeah, so to me, I feel like...
What does that have to do with anything? Everyone can respond however they want to what they hear. What does that have to do with anything? What's the difference between
so you're
things?
kind of... You're basically giving this attitude where it's like, yeah, I'm smart enough to know Crowder's full of shit. The masses are dumb. They could be brainwashed. So we need to shut this down, or else they might be.
You're still not
convinced.
You're still not answering my question. Everyone is capable of being brainwashed by any position. That's just how human beings seem to be. What is the difference to you between saying you guys need to kill black people and saying we the white race need to kill black people?
Because one is just a general,
but they lead
like
to the
one is
same
an
outcome.
idea. One is an idea. The other is an order.
Wait. It's not an order though. Like they could just say no to the order. Both of them lead effectively to the same outcome.
Well, if somebody goes on Twitter and says, "I think Trump should be killed," someone should do it. Even that I wouldn't say is problematic or like it shouldn't be suppressed. Only if the only instances of violence that I would disagree with, or of speech that I would disagree with, is just a direct incitement.
Yeah, but why? It leads to the same outcomes in both cases. Regardless of what wording you use, the impetus there is exactly the same.
No, because when somebody says we should lynch all black people, that's a thing that people can decide to do.
Wait, but they can if they're ordered to as well. That has nothing to do with it. It's not as though when somebody says something in a commanding tone that you're obligated to do it. In both cases, whether they're saying it directly or indirectly, you still make the choice.
So the difference is that I only find free speech or inciting violence with speech problematic if there's a credible, direct cause and effect.
All of those have already been established. We're literally seeing language invented by certain YouTubers popping up in the manifestos of terrorists. That has already been established.
I feel someone like Sargon would look at people doing violent things and he would look at it with disgust.
That's irrelevant to me. I don't care what they think about it. Much in the same way the law doesn't particularly care, like whether or not like you accidentally or deliberately hit that pedestrian. Well, it does, but it's bad either way. No, I don't really care. The language he disseminates, the rhetoric he uses, has certain outcomes, and those outcomes lead to violence. They lead to harassment. They lead to the silencing of other people's free speech. No, it is a fact. This isn't like hard political theory. Like, it seems to me like you're only interested in putting the pieces together if it's as simple as this person's holding a gun, they pull the trigger, the bullet goes into another person, we can see the chain, bullet from person to gun to person holding the gun. But in reality, if we're talking about like really big, important philosophical issues like freedom of speech, we can't just limit it to like that base of discourse. We have to be willing to consider the possibility that there are indirect ways that people can affect massive amounts of harm, and we have to consider with some legitimacy whether or not it's valuable to curtail that. So, do you think YouTube should have a TOS?
Well, let me just address that chat really quickly. I'm reading the chat, and I just want to say, I am not a fan of Sargon. I watched like 2 of his videos in the past couple months. I've watched every single one of Vosh's videos, or rather listen to it. I download them and listen to them. But so yeah, this is not coming from a position of like bad faith or anything. But sorry, to address your question, can you repeat the last part?
Do you believe that YouTube should have a TOS?
No.
Okay. So you think that you should be able to do anything you want on YouTube as long as it's not illegal?
There should be barriers to prevent, adult-rated content from reaching children. But aside from that, I don't think there should be any barriers as long as what you're doing is illegal.
Sure. So, what if it was found that any website that doesn't have a TOS invariably devolves into a bunch of white nationalists, hate posting nonstop, threatening, doxing, brigading other content creators, and then
Oh, so you're kind of talking about like Poll, for example?
I'm talking about literally every place on the internet that doesn't have a strict terms of service. All of them end up turning out the exact same way because the people who are being barred from other services due to their TOS requirements are then forced onto those platforms. And what that invariably leads to is not only a degradation of the platform, but also harm to the other people on that platform. Do you think that a restaurant should be able to kick out a customer if they start acting unruly in a way that isn't necessarily illegal?
Only if somebody feels physically in danger.
Wait, if you own a restaurant and there's somebody in that restaurant who comes in smeared in shit and hollering about the end times, you don't think you should be able to remove them?
You're right. Let me rephrase that. Like, only if they're disrupting other people's ability to enjoy, the contents of the restaurant.
Well, that's kind of an arbitrary standard, too. What if racist white folk are in the restaurant and a black person comes in? What if they find being in the presence of a black person disrupts their ability to enjoy their time at the restaurant?
Well, that would be up to the restaurant owner. Well,
so you think the restaurant owner should be able to kick black people out if it makes their white patrons more comfortable?
No, I would say that's... First of all, I'm pretty sure that would be illegal, wouldn't it?
It would be illegal, but we're talking about philosophy here. Do you think that they should be able to do that? I don't really care what is or isn't legal, after all. If we're trying to decide what is or is not philosophically justifiable, we kind of build our law around the philosophical justification. We don't really, look at law and then use it to decide what's right.
Okay, but can you rephrase the basic question that you're asking again?
Yeah, do you think that a restaurant owner should be able to kick out a black person if the racist white patrons don't like being around a black person?
I would say in that situation, when it comes to basic human rights, that would be the white person infringing on the black person's right to freedom of movement or his freedom in general.
Do you think that people who are smeared in shit who are yelling about the end times should have freedom of movement as well?
No, because they would disrupt everyone's ability to eat.
But the black person is also disrupting the ability of the white patrons to eat because the white patrons are racist. There might be another ulterior condition that we're trying to use to determine whether or not it's acceptable to ban people from the establishment.
Okay, well, I think just from a basic human rights level, there is a difference between kicking out a black person or kicking out someone smeared in shit. The difference being that the black person didn't infringe on anybody else's personal space or their ability to enjoy the meal or anything.
Okay.
So,
well, I mean, they do, but you're arguing that that's an unjustified belief. That even if the black person is disrupting the white people's meal because the white people are racist, that doesn't justify their perspective on the issue.
Sorry, say that again?
So what you're arguing is that even though both the black person and the shit-covered person are disruptive to the patrons, you argue it's okay to kick out the person smeared in shit, but not the black person, because it's acceptable for a person to be black. They have a right to participate in sort of the public forum, but a person smeared in shit has violated the social contract in some way, and they do not have the same right or expectation to decent service if they go outside.
Yeah, that sounds good. Phrased it way better than I could.
Okay, yeah, cool. But you acknowledge that being smeared in shit and yelling about the end times, both of these things are not illegal, nor necessarily are they incitements to violence. They're unpleasant, but they're ultimately legal and actually rather harmless, as all things go.
I'm pretty sure you could be arrested for disrupting the peace, couldn't you?
It really depends on the extent to which you're doing it. But that's an interesting question. I'm not really talking about law. Do you think it should be...
You just mentioned law. You talked about law right now.
Well, I'm saying that philosophical determinations don't really consider law because you base law around philosophy, not the other way around. But if we're speaking strictly about what is right or what's moral, do you think it's okay for people who are disrupting the public good to be arrested? Like if a person's out in the street just screaming at people, not insults or threats or anything, just yelling at people.
I think there's a a clear line between speaking and either yelling, because that could be a physical kind of disruption, and what was the other one? Being like smelling. That's more of a physical thing. So yeah, I think if somebody is calmly speaking, they could say whatever the hell they want.
Okay, but wait, but I'm interested earlier. You do believe that a restaurant owner should be able to kick out a person smeared in shit, yelling incoherently?
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Because the smell to me is a form of minor assault. Like,
okay,
you're assaulting their senses, basically.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I agree with that. So you believe that even though it's not literal physical assault, like the shit-smeared person isn't tackling anyone or anything, there is a type of violence associated with them being smeared in shit because they are negatively, they are in a empirical way, they are hurting the people around them. It's kind of in a silly way, but it's true, though. Nobody wants to go around smelling other people who smell like shit. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you agree then that private businesses should have a right to not host the services or content of people who they believe are odorious or are making less pleasant the experiences of other people.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so we're in agreement then that it's perfectly okay for YouTube and other sites to have a TOS because in doing so, they're fulfilling the exact same principle. A person who comes into YouTube as a white nationalist, disseminating rhetoric about white nationalism and how Jews and black people are bad, may not be, in the strictest sense, violating a law, but they are making things hell for everyone else, and there is sort of an injurious element to existing on a platform alongside somebody who believes you need to be lynched for your skin color.
It's just like Tyler, the creator, with his infamous tweet. Just close your eyes, turn off the screen. That does not compare at all.
Interesting. Wait, so how? You realize that Tyler, the creator, got made fun of for that tweet because it was stupid, right?
No, I thought it was perfectly apt. He said, "How's cyberbullying real? Just turn that shit up."
Yeah, people made fun of. Yeah, that was made fun of.
Sure, it's true that it has it still has an effect, because it's happening.
And I think he redacted it later too, because he knew it was also stupid.
Okay, well, I still stand by the fact that something on a computer screen, an idea that's just on your screen, that's not physical, that's not assault, that's not something that you have a right to shut down.
You can just leave the restaurant. If you don't like the shit-smelling man who's yelling a lot, you can just leave the restaurant, can't you?
Yeah, but it would be in the restaurant owner's interest to.
And it would be in YouTube's interest to keep their patrons as well.
I have a bigger issue with YouTube because they're essentially a monopoly.
Well, wait, so no, we're moving to a different argument now. You agree then, fundamentally, that there is some legitimacy to the argument that YouTube has a right to expel patrons of its service that end up hurting the experience of others, do you not?
Does YouTube have a right? I think they shouldn't have a right because of the fact that they're so, because they're essentially a monopoly. So I am in favor of the government controlling YouTube.
Well, we've moved to a completely different argument here. So you realize that even if a person is walking around free on their own on the streets, not using any private services, as you so wisely pointed out, they can still be arrested for disrupting the public good. So even if YouTube was nationalized and turned into a public service, that wouldn't necessarily mean the government couldn't have their own TOS. Hell, government-owned websites sometimes have comment sections that have their own TOS. Even if a website has is owned, the BBC, for example, is not, well, it's not technically a government wing, but it's a publicly owned institution, or at least the funding comes from the public. And they have their own rules in terms of service when it comes to, participating in their comment sections and chat. Just because you're operating from within a public framework doesn't mean that you can behave however you want.
Well, if the government does that, then I disagree. It's as simple as that. I just think that first of all, YouTube should be a public service, and secondly, people should be allowed to say anything that they want on it. Speech is not violence.
But you just argue there's a kind of violence to smelling bad near people, but you don't, which can't actually kill anyone. But speaking about the need to engage in a race war it can lead to violence. Smelling like shit can't. On its own, it is utterly harmless, if unpleasant. This is not the case with white nationalist rhetoric.
It all boils down to you looking at a computer screen, deciding what you want to watch, what you want to hear, and if you don't like it, close the window.
So if I had closed the window, Christchurch wouldn't have happened? If only they had just been a little bit more diligent with their internet usage, they wouldn't have been Christchurched?
Well, where do you think would have stopped Christchurch, in your opinion? Like,
the Christchurch shooter named the people he was radicalized by.
Well,
yeah. There's a direct link. This isn't indirect. It's not ephemeral. It's not intangible.
No,
people respond to propaganda.
You're making it sound like this was an innocent, normal guy until he got radicalized.
No. You can't shunt it off like that. You can't make the argument like, oh, they're not affected by radicalization, and then, like, when it's clear they are because they name the people who influence them, you back off and say, well, we don't actually know for a fact, even though he directly named them, and named the rhetoric they used, and named the ideas they came up with, and said they inspired him to engage. You can't do that. It's pretty clear that they led to this. You're trying to impose a level of abstraction that isn't there. Political theory is pretty clear on this. People respond stochastically to radicalization online. This is how ISIS does recruitment. You don't like ISIS? Then do you have a problem then with the fact that they engage in the exact same kind of recruitment tactics that the alt-right does? They post online to forums that they know are largely populated with lonely, sexually frustrated, emasculated young men, and then they try to talk about how the only way they're going to be able to get the girl is by repopulating the glorious caliphate. It's exactly the same. And I disagree with that too, and I don't think ISIS recruitment videos have a place on YouTube.
Okay, you kind of lost me in that tangent, but all right. Getting back to my basic point.
Wait, but can you respond to the point I made though?
Can you rephrase it in a little simpler way, because you really kind of went off?
Yeah, there isn't like this. There isn't this like unfathomable abstraction between radicalization and people being radicalized. ISIS has literally, you could see the territory that ISIS has carved out of the world from the International Space Station. And that territory was carved by young men radicalized by rhetoric nearly identical to the rhetoric that is used by folks like Sargon of Akkad. There isn't abstraction here. This is just how it works.
Okay, I think in the real world, in the country that we live in, there's a big difference when it comes to free speech and the fact that anybody can go watch Vosh, become a lefty and all that, or go the other way. Everyone has a free choice. Now, in a place like the Middle East, yeah, people get radicalized because they already have a majority, like a peer pressure. Everyone thinks that way.
No. This distinction doesn't exist. There's peer pressure here too, and over there in the Middle East, they make the active choice to engage in whatever ISIS nonsense they engage in, and they do so because they were exposed to that propaganda. It's exactly the same.
Their whole culture enables that.
No.
Like
You don't get to look at two analogous situations and say that it's different because Muslims are different. It's not.
No, I'm not saying racially different. I'm saying their culture is different. You said yourself that you condemn, that you don't like Muslim culture.
Wait. I don't like our culture. Like, even slightly. Our culture is disgusting and barbaric.
Okay, but you made the point that some cultures are better than others.
I think there are some elements of cultures that are better than others, but that doesn't mean that there's not an analogous situation here. It's exactly the same. Are you okay with YouTube keeping ISIS recruitment videos up?
Yeah.
Okay, so even if these ISIS recruitment videos got a huge number of views, and you see tons of people in the comments talking about how they're going to behead all the infidels, and it's time to keep the sluts like in rags, and it's time to like impregnate brown women to bring back like the caliphites and stuff, and you could see like that there was direct harm being done for the perpetuation of this video's uptime, like you would be okay with that continuing to exist?
I think anyone who would engage in violence already
That's
has.
what you're saying is factually incorrect. On a political science, sociological, and psychological level, people aren't just genetically predisposed to committing violence. People commit violence because they're
No,
exposed to
no,
certain
not genetically,
environmental
just
stimuli.
just the way they grew up
Wait.
or
The way you
whatever.
grow up can be watching ISIS recruitment videos, or watching Sargon of Akkad, or watching Paul Joseph Watson. Environment is what shapes a person's personality more than anything else. If part of that
Okay.
environment is those videos, it's more likely they're going to go that way.
Well, you have a choice. It's not
Wait,
like
everyone always has a choice. That's irrelevant. What matters
not
is the
really.
outcome.
There's a big difference between growing up in the U.S. and
You've
growing
pivoted.
up.
You've pivoted again. You're acting as though people in like the Middle East are just like they have no choice but to become ISIS fighters. That's
No,
not
it's not
true.
that they have no choice. It's that this is shoved down their throats.
No, it's not.
Not the ISIS part, but
So is it
just the
here?
general
Wait, I'm sorry.
culture.
No, it's not. ISIS isn't like. It's not like the whole Middle East was ISIS, and then they just
Well, I'm not
spontaneously
just talking
decided.
about ISIS, but I'm talking about cultivating the ideologies and the beliefs that could further push someone.
Yeah,
into
you mean like
becoming
fascism and
ISIS.
white supremacy, which have been integral to America's political culture for the past 300 years? Yeah, I agree. Environment shapes people's personality, and part of that white supremacy is the shit we leave up on YouTube. And part of their Arab supremacy and militant Islamicism comes in the form of the internet radicalization that ISIS people produce deliberately. What you're arguing for is to make the world worse for no reason. The world isn't made better for the existence of these videos. It leads to things like ISIS. ISIS would not exist if they had only had YouTube and its TOS as an option to recruit people.
I just have a problem with you. It belies like a general feeling that everyone else is inferior when you say, "Oh, I'm too smart."
Wait, what is that? When did I ever say I'm too smart? What
no,
is
not
that?
literally. I'm just saying that's kind of the impression I get.
How?
Because you make everyone else out to be so easily swayed.
Everyone is easily swayed. Everyone is a product of their environment. You're the one who just said that Arab men didn't have a choice to get into ISIS because their culture influenced them.
That's when it's your entire world. In the U.S., it's not
This is a distinction that does not exist. The entire world of the United States is based on white supremacy and xenophobia. That's been the case for as long as this country has been
You're just
around.
inciting panic, and that's
Wait. Calm down. I'm not inciting panic. You're the one who's not capable of processing just basic sociological truths. You're trying to enforce some sort of distinction here, something that makes us better than them, something that makes the Arab world weak and easily susceptible to that propaganda, but something that makes us specific and distinct and strong. It's not true. The Nazis were popular here in the United States of America before they weren't. For a decade, Adolf Hitler was one of the most popular foreign political leaders because he was strong and because he was white and because he liked being strong and white and because America responded to it. This country isn't special. People here are radicalized.
No, your issue is that you can't point at history and then be like, well, that means this is hard. That's not how our country is now. It doesn't matter what was before. Yeah, things were bad before.
Way. It's still this way.
That's where I take issue with your perspective. Is you're making it sound like we're gonna.
Do you have any idea how many times you've pivoted to a different talking point over the course of this conversation? Do you I feel like I would need a topographic expert to go back over this and find all the times where rather than dealing with a point I presented to you, you move to the goalpost further down the road so you could talk about.
I don't think I'm moving the goalposts. My original point was actually going to be more about the issue, the whole punch and Nazi thing, and then we really went off into specific ISIS territory.
Yeah, so it is a fact of the matter that the existence of those radicalizing elements hurts people. There is a direct correlation between the existence of those radicalizing elements and people engaging in actual real-world harm, which can range from terrorism to the implementation of political policies that hurt people, particularly minorities. With that being said, I think, because I care about people, I do not want these policies to exist, so I want to stop them from being implemented. And because I care about free speech, I want to hamstring people who would seek to destroy our society and replace it with one that does not have free speech. I advocate fundamentally and to a better degree for both of the things you claim to care about. But
You're still being the arbiter of what's acceptable and what's not. That's
wait. No, I'm not. I'm not saying that I want to be Grand Führer of America and personally take down all the videos. I'm saying I want to responsibly.
that's what you're trying to accomplish
No, I'm
in a
wait. No,
small
I'm
way.
not. Do you think I'm gonna be like president?
No, I'm saying that you're advocating for that. Doesn't matter who's in the
I'm not
leader or whatever.
advocating for me to be in charge of
I'm not
America.
talking about you. I'm talking about what you're saying. Like just
Wait, you agree
what
that
you want to
police can make
happen.
you agree police can make the decision when it's okay to subvert one's life to protect life in general? What's the difference here? Can we not have an institution that does the same when it comes to the violence inflicted by certain types of speech?
Um, there's nobody in the world who can correctly
Why?
identify.
No, wait. No, wait. Yes, we can. It's really,
Nobody
really
can
simple.
look into the future and just say
Harassment.
this is going to be violence. This is not going to be
Nobody
violence.
can know perfectly. Wait, you can never know perfectly as a police officer whether or not it's okay to take a person's life. But we understand that it's preferable to sometimes make mistakes than to never ever try.
Okay, well, taking your example, if I would say if a black guy is running away, for example, the police officer shouldn't shoot him.
Yeah,
But if
we can
he
make
poses a
general
clear threat-
distinction. Wait, are you saying that you're capable, if you were a police officer, to empirically determine with 100% accuracy when and when not it's okay to open fire?
No, it's impossible.
Okay, wait, but I agree, but we do it anyway. So obviously, just because we can't form a perfect, axiomatically, epistemologically flawless distinction between times we should and should not pull the trigger, doesn't mean we shouldn't sometimes pull the trigger. Likewise, just because we don't know 100% how the effects of speech will turn out, doesn't mean there aren't some forms of speech that should be curtailed.
Yeah, but who's going to decide?
Well, the police decide
government
for the...
agency?
I mean, right now, YouTube is doing, like, a decent enough job. They could... Oh, shit. They could do more. But for the most part, like, YouTube does an acceptable job. You can't post a video saying, like, I'm gonna kill all N-words. N-word, N-word, N-word. I'm gonna murder them all. Can't do that on YouTube. That's a good
What if we
start.
flip the situation so that we live in a world where online media outlets and sites like YouTube are really right-wing, and they do the exact same thing and suppress
Yeah, they would already
left-wing channels.
They would already do that. That's the thing. Right-wingers, when they get power, just hurt us. They do that on their own. They aren't. It's not like they wait for a justification on it. It's not like a fascist is going to be like, now that I've attained power, let's see, did the lefties treat me nicely? Should I be nice to them too? They will always hurt us.
Okay, you're going off into like really general, just shit about all right is bad, is going to violence.
Wait, no. That's what happens when fascists take power.
Okay, but who are the fascists that are taking power?
The Republican Party is presently pretty fascist, but they don't have control over YouTube, to my knowledge.
The thing is that you're arguing from a perspective where you just assume you're right. If we, like I said before,
I'm not. This is the same non-argument I hear from everyone who doesn't like dealing with complicated philosophical issues, and it's very, very strange and very, very frustrating. I'm not arguing I'm perfect. I'm not arguing I'm always right. I'm arguing that sometimes it's very easy to see certain types of speech lead to a tremendous amount of harm. It stifles other people's free speech if you allow people to engage in certain types of speech. It leads to empirical real-world harm. If we can curtail these things, we can improve the world. And given the fact that people like me have been saying that people like Lauren Southern have been harming discourse for ages, and now we literally see terrorist attacks happening on account of their rhetoric, it's pretty clear that we have at least some handle on what is or is not correct when it comes to this.
All right, hold your horse. You're talking like a minute for everything I say. Like, give me a break. Here's my point. If we live in a world where YouTube had the exact same policies, but it was politically flipped, wouldn't you then say that you would argue against YouTube's right to do that?
Wait, it depends on what they were doing. If YouTube was controlled by right-wing people, but they tried to target the same basic types of behavior that I would, then no, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
You wouldn't have a problem with them. Or what if they suppress people who just talked about leftist propaganda.
I'm not advocating that you suppress everyone who talks about conservative propaganda. Are you saying are you asking me whether or not I would approve if conservative people would do
You
something
just said
different
you
from
would
what I would
shut
do?
down Steven Crowder and
Yeah.
obliterate
Yeah, because they
Cardon.
constantly harass and promote racism and xenophobia, not because they're conservatives. Isn't
Okay,
it, don't you think it's
name
weird
one
that, like,
channel that you wouldn't obliterate that is still right wing.
hey, remember when Twitter said that they couldn't roll out an anti-Nazi like ban bot because it would end up targeting too many Republican officials? That's how I feel right now. Okay, right now most Republicans are fascists. What conservatives? I don't know.
Oh,
Is
wait, you gotta
Crowder
answer the
conservative?
question. Hold on.
Yeah, Hunter Avallone. There we go.
Okay, I don't know who that is. But even still, like it just goes to show that.
Wait, no, it doesn't. The principles that I'm outlining here are consistent. If you advocate for bigotry or harassment, I think that should be something that's against TOS. It's not my
I'm
fault.
looking at chat. Shoe on head is not right wing.
It's
These
not.
people are absurd.
It's not my fault. Well, compared to me, it's not my fault that conservatives relentlessly engage in targeted discriminatory behavior. That's kind of their shtick,
Okay, so you can name one channel, but let's be real here. You're basically
Wait. You realize you're not mounting.
obliterate 90%.
You're not. Yeah.
Of
No
the right-wing
shit.
channels on
Yeah,
YouTube.
they're horrible. Like, you're not. This isn't a counter argument. Yeah. My entire channel is based on the idea that conservative arguments are fucking terrible. It's not just that they're wrong, it's that they're fascists. They want to hurt people. Conservatism is fundamentally about destroying people, about preserving and promoting hierarchy. The fact that a lot of conservatives would get axed in my preferred TOS system is A, not an argument against what I'm advocating for, B, not because they're conservative, but rather because they are bigots, and 3, not an argument against the idea of implementing a TOS to begin with, and 4, irrelevant when it comes to what they would do if they were in a similar position. If they also targeted harassment and bigotry, I would be okay with the TOS policy of a right-wing YouTube. If they started just targeting people for being, gay? Then yeah, I would take an issue with that.
Okay, so but you're still agreeing with, or you're saying that you, in a flip society, you wouldn't agree with YouTube's TOS.
Wait, no, wait, are you listening to anything that I'm saying?
No, wait. Let me be clear. You said if someone is gay and they took down the channel, you would be against that. Okay?
Yes, I think it's bad to target people for being gay.
Okay, so we're just talking generally about the power that YouTube has. So
wait, no, just because I say it's okay for the police to shoot like a serial killer doesn't mean I think it's okay for you to shoot a baby in a crib. The tool and who it is applied to matters. I'm not advocating that YouTube should be able to just ban anyone for any reason. I'm saying you should ban people for certain reasons, and I've outlined those reasons. I don't care who enacts that.
What you're saying is people I disagree with, essentially.
No, I disagree with lots of people on lots of things. I'm saying bigotry and harassment and incitements to violence.
But a lot of people don't think that certain things are bigotry and harassment.
That's not an argument. The fact that other people are wrong isn't an argument.
Yeah, you're saying for a fact what's wrong and what's right to put on YouTube.
Of course, I think I'm right. I wouldn't advocate for a position if I thought I was wrong. Obviously, I think I'm right, but I'm not advocating that everyone I disagree with be banned off YouTube. Huh?
It doesn't matter. What I'm advocating for is that it doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. YouTube shouldn't overstep its bounds and start banning people for talking.
Wait. So it's not overstepping its bounds. Why would you morally load that? The YouTube is currently a private business and it has a terms of service. It has the right to ban people.
Well, we went over that. I think ideally YouTube should be...
which would make the platform worse, yes. Every platform that doesn't have a TOS ends up turning to a shithole because, as it turns out, you want to discourage some types of antisocial behavior to maintain decorum and civility on that platform. That just seems to be a fact of the matter. You realize, no one's right is being infringed here. I'm fighting for the right to prevent people from being genocided. I'm fighting for the right for people to not have to go online and be bombarded with harassment and calls for their death. You're fighting for the right for those people to continue to exist on those platforms.
Sorry, I talked over you for a second. What was the last thing you said?
You're fighting for the right for those people to continue existing on those platforms, even though all they do is harm.
So Crowder was calling Carlos Maza, what was he calling him, like a fairy?
Let's be a little queer, fairy, what have you, yeah. Which violates
Yeah.
the YouTube TOS concerning harassment and discrimination based on one's
Okay.
sexuality.
Well, I think that's a load of bullshit. I think that should not have been done because
Wait, his channel wasn't
it's.
banned.
Well, I mean, he got in some sort of trouble, didn't he?
His channel was demonetized. He broke
Yeah.
the
Yeah, okay.
rules. You just seem to have a problem with like rules, like being implemented.
Well, here's the
Why,
problem
like
is that
you just want to make like society worse. I don't get it. You're not providing
saying-
any
okay,
philosophical
so
justifications for any of your
all right,
arguments. You're just saying like no matter what I say or how many arguments you provide, you're just like, well, I don't think they should be able to do that. I think society should be worse, and I can't explain why. Why?
Well, here's the thing. Let's use that Carlos Maz example as a way to explain everything more broadly. I think Crowder should not have gotten into trouble for saying that, and I'm assuming you think that was correct, right? Or that it was correct for him to be demonetized.
Well, he should have been banned, but sure, a demonetization is, I guess, a nice consolation prize.
Okay, so that's exactly the issue that I have. Is
Well,
that,
yeah, I know you have an issue with that. Why?
okay, let me say it. You're saying somebody teasing someone and calling him a lesbian.
Wait. That's not teasing. That's like saying somebody is like an uppity Negro is teasing. It's just homophobia.
Okay, I don't even care. Okay, use that example. It doesn't even matter. That's not. You're extrapolating. That if you're saying it's okay for that instance to result in someone being demonetized,